Sarah could tell that word had spread about what happened. Some kitchen staff gave her curious looks, while others avoided her entirely. She didn't blame them. Her actions had affected everyone. As she started her shift washing dishes, the physical demands of the job and the heat from the kitchen made her sweat. This new role was exhausting, both mentally and physically, but it felt like the beginning of something different, an opportunity for redemption. As Sarah worked in the kitchen, the discomfort and isolation hit her harder than the physical labor. She was no longer on the front lines, no longer interacting with customers, and it felt like the restaurant was hiding her away out of shame. Her thoughts kept drifting back to her conversation with Ethan. His calm, deliberate words stayed with her. He had given her an opportunity to change, and that was something she couldn't take lightly. But how would she even begin? Halfway through her shift, Christine entered the kitchen, causing a stir as the staff straightened up. Sarah turned, unsure of what was coming next. "Sarah," Christine said firmly, "we've met with the staff about what happened. Moving forward, we'll be conducting mandatory sensitivity training for everyone." Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. "Sensitivity training?" she asked. Christine nodded. "Yes, but I'm assigning you more responsibility. You'll be working closely with HR to help design part of the program." Sarah blinked, surprised. "Me? Why?" Christine's gaze softened. "Because you need to be part of the solution. You made a mistake, and now it's time to show that you're willing to do the work." Sarah swallowed hard. This wasn't the punishment she had expected. Instead, it felt like a real chance to make things right. "I'll do it," she said, her voice quiet but determined. "I'll do whatever it takes." Christine nodded. "Good. You start tomorrow." The rest of the day was a blur for Sarah. She couldn't stop thinking about the responsibility she now had to make things right, not just for herself, but for the entire restaurant. The next morning, Sarah arrived early, nervous but ready to start working on the sensitivity training program. HR, led by Karen, greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Sarah. I understand you'll be helping with the training program," Karen said. "Yes, I want to help," Sarah replied, trying to steady her nerves. Karen smiled. "That's good to hear. We'll be focusing on implicit bias, cultural sensitivity, and communication. But I'd like your input on how we can ensure that incidents like what happened with Mr. Williams never happen again." Sarah felt a pang of guilt at the mention of Ethan's name, but pushed through. "I think the most important thing is for people to understand that everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are or what they look like. It's not just about avoiding offensive comments, it's about seeing people as individuals, not stereotypes." Karen nodded. "That's a great starting point." As they continued working on ideas, Sarah became more engaged. She suggested role-playing exercises and real-world case studies of discrimination in the workplace. Karen was impressed with her insight. "You're taking this seriously," Karen observed. Sarah met her gaze. "I have to. This is my chance to make up for what I did." By the end of the day, they had a solid plan in place, and Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just about fixing her mistakes, it was about creating lasting change. She left the office feeling like she was finally on the right path. While Sarah was grappling with her own redemption, Ethan Williams was reflecting on his experience as well. It wasn't the first time he had encountered racism, but something about this incident stirred deeper feelings. He couldn't stop thinking about the confrontation and the pain he saw in Sarah's face when she realized the gravity of her actions. Ethan sat in his office, gazing out at the city skyline. Despite his many achievements, moments like the one with Sarah reminded him that some people still only saw the color of his skin. He had spent his life breaking down barriers, building an empire from nothing, and proving wrong those who doubted him. Yet, no matter how far he'd come, moments like this showed him that the fight against racism was far from over. Ethan's thoughts drifted back to his roots. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, he had witnessed his mother endure countless indignities because of her race. He had vowed early on to rise above it, not just for himself, but for all who had been told they weren't good enough because of their skin color. He had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but incidents like the one with Sarah reminded him that the struggle for equality persisted. Ethan thought about the restaurant situation and how Christine, the manager, had informed him that Sarah had been reassigned and was now working on a sensitivity training program. He was impressed with how seriously Sarah seemed to be taking it. Most people would be defensive or dismissive after an incident like that, but Sarah had done the opposite. She owned up to her mistake and was actively working to make things right. Ethan respected that. He thought back to their conversation. Her voice had been filled with regret, but also with hope. Ethan had seen that spark before in people on the brink of change. He knew that true growth often came from moments of discomfort, from facing one's own biases and ignorance head-on. An idea began to form in his mind. Ethan had been working on a mentorship program through his company, designed to help underprivileged youth from marginalized communities break into industries where they were often underrepresented. He was looking for ways to expand the program and raise awareness. What if Sarah could help with that? Ethan knew it was a bold idea, but the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. Sarah had confronted her own biases and was now committed to change. She could become a powerful advocate for the program, using her personal growth as an example of overcoming prejudice. He picked up the phone and called Christine. "Christine, it's Ethan. I've been thinking about Sarah and the sensitivity training. How's she doing with it?" Christine hesitated briefly, then replied, "She's doing better than I expected. She's serious about making amends and has come up with some great ideas." Ethan smiled. "Good. I'd like to meet with her. There's something I want to discuss." Christine sounded surprised but intrigued. "Of course, I'll arrange it." After hanging up, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that real change didn't happen by accident. It took effort, commitment, and the courage to have difficult conversations. By involving Sarah in his mentorship program, he could turn a negative experience into something positive, not just for her, but for the many young people the program aimed to help. The following day, Sarah paced nervously in her small apartment. Christine had told her that Ethan wanted to meet with her again, and anxiety gripped her. What could he possibly want? Had she failed in her efforts to change? Sarah had been working tirelessly to prove herself in the kitchen, determined to learn from her mistakes. The sensitivity training had opened her eyes to racism and prejudice, but the weight of her past actions still hung over her. When Christine informed her that Ethan wanted to meet again, Sarah couldn't shake her nerves. She had no idea what he would say, or if she had failed in her attempts at redemption. The next day, as Sarah entered the sleek modern office building where Ethan worked, she felt out of place. The grandeur of the surroundings only intensified her anxiety. She was greeted by Ethan's assistant, who led her down a long corridor, and with each step, Sarah felt her heart race. When she entered the room, Ethan was standing by the window looking out at the city. He turned, offering a small, welcoming smile. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Sarah sat down, clasping her hands nervously in her lap. She waited for Ethan to speak first. "I've been thinking a lot about our encounter," Ethan began, sitting down across from her. "It was difficult for both of us, but I believe moments like these can lead to real growth if we're willing to learn." Sarah nodded. "I've been trying to learn. I know I was wrong, and I've been working hard in the kitchen. The sensitivity training has been helpful." "I'm glad to hear that," Ethan replied, "but I think there's an opportunity for something more. I've been working on a mentorship program through my company. It's designed to help underprivileged youth from marginalized communities, and I want to expand it. I believe you could play a part in that expansion." Sarah listened, confused. She wasn't sure what this had to do with her. "Your experience, difficult as it was, has the potential to become a powerful story of growth and change," Ethan continued. "I want you to be involved in the mentorship program, perhaps as an advocate. You could speak to others about confronting bias and prejudice, sharing your journey of self-reflection." Sarah was stunned. This was the last thing she had expected. "You want me to be a part of your mentorship program?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded. "Yes. I know it's a lot to consider, but I believe you have the potential to make a difference. People need to hear stories like yours, stories of change and redemption." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. She had been so focused on making up for her mistake that she never considered turning it into something positive. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I'm still learning, still trying to figure things out.